and I was so frustrated, like could not get out of bed every day. Everything came back normal. Okay, fine, I will try the stupid socks. I'm like, I know what's wrong with me. Hello my friends, it is Amy Esther here, and today we are doing the full story, the whole thing, from the day things went wrong in my body to today, which is November 19th, 2019, my chronic illness story. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you have been here before, I am so grateful that you have subscribed and that you support me on this channel. If it's your first time here, make sure you subscribe because I make videos about my life with chronic illness 3 times a week, and you don't want to miss any of those because I share lots of tips and tricks and the pain and the sorrow and the good and the bad, all the things with chronic illness. So if you are interested in that, if you have a chronic illness especially, please subscribe to my channel because we are building this community together. You can also follow along on Facebook, search Amy Esther, or on Instagram, Amy_Esther, for more from me. And today I wanted to share with you my chronic illness journey. I have a video that I posted about a week ago, which is how my chronic illnesses started. So you can watch that to see kind of what went wrong and how this bug that I got totally threw off my body. And today I wanted to share from the day that it started to now what has happened. And I have notes, so hopefully I don't miss anything along the way because it has been quite the journey. If you haven't been here before, you should know that I do have Hashimoto's disease, POTS, fibromyalgia, endometriosis, PCOS, chronic migraines, chronic fatigue syndrome, SIBO, and IBS. So lots of things going on, and I wanted to share with you from the beginning to now, how has this journey been of getting diagnosed and all of the things. So let's get started. So starting with March of 2016, March 19th of 2016, my husband and I got married. It was a beautiful, wonderful day. And a week later, I got food poisoning. We both got food poisoning, and you can hear again in my other video about how this threw things off. But 24 hours after that food poisoning, my husband was totally fine and I was not. I still feel those symptoms today. At that point, I didn't have any of my other severe symptoms. I really just had stomach pain, bloating, some of the, all the digestive issues you can think of, but it wasn't so bad that I couldn't live normal life. It was just that I didn't feel very good. And I talk about in my How It Started video that I was eating really healthy at the time. And it's funny because I had a burger the night that I got food poisoning, and that was like the most unhealthy thing that I've had in months. And it was the only time on our whole honeymoon I ate something unhealthy, and my husband convinced me, like, just go for it, let's just have it. Like, before I'd have a salad or a chicken sandwich, and of course the one unhealthy thing I eat. But I had also just got married, and so I was wanting to cook a lot, and so I was making lots of different meals and different things. And if they're any of my original Instagram followers, I started an Instagram account around this time just because I loved cooking and I was wanting to share the recipes I was making. And so I was making lots of good, healthy meals, all homemade. We didn't really go out to eat because I was just loving cooking. And I was sick every single night. Bloating was probably my most severe symptom, but stomach aches and all the things. And it was really frustrating. So finally I said, this is not normal. Like, something has happened. So we went to the doctor in April of 2016. And this was the first doctor that I saw. And it was just a normal family doctor. And he said, okay, you probably have an ulcer or gastritis. So he gave me omeprazole, which was supposed to help with that. And I also was having severe burping at this time, and that symptom actually got better on the omeprazole, but everything else was still there. And he put me on it for a month, and I went back in and said, this has not done anything. So he extended that to 3 months, and at the end of those 3 months, I was like, this is not gastritis. And I would research everything. I was not eating the foods that upset gastritis and ulcers. I was doing everything that I could think of, and nothing was working. So finally I was like, we are not doing this anymore. So I went to get an appointment with a GI doctor, and unfortunately he was booked out for about 3 months. So it wasn't until September of 2016 that I actually got an appointment with him. So during that time, I tried a lot of things myself. I tried going gluten-free, I tried going dairy-free, I tried a few different diets, and tried I was gonna eat even healthier, I was gonna exercise even more, and my symptoms just started to get worse. And at this time, in September, I started student teaching. I had just graduated from college, and so it was a little stressful because I had just graduated and now I was doing teaching, and I was having all these symptoms. And so I thought because of the stress, I was getting extra symptoms because I started to get really bad fatigue, and I was really tired all the time. My muscles started to ache, and I was having a hard time exercising. Pretty much all my symptoms just got worse and worse, and I was getting headaches and just all these crazy symptoms. So finally, I got into the GI doctor, and I went to see this GI doctor, and he put me on the low FODMAP diet. He also scheduled me for an endoscopy, which is a stomach scope where they go down through your mouth or your throat, and then they look at your stomach. So I started the low FODMAP diet, and I had my endoscopy scheduled about a month later. And the low FODMAP diet actually did help me. It helped my symptoms a little bit, my stomach issues. It didn't help any of my other symptoms, my fatigue and all of that, but it did help my stomach symptoms a little bit. It didn't take them away, but I just seemed to have a little bit of relief. And then I got my stomach scope, and he said that I was lactose intolerant, and that I had acid reflux, but nothing else. They tested me for all the things, I don't know what, all the things that stomach scopes test for, and everything else came back normal. And so I talked to my uncle, who's a doctor, and he said, no, it's not really helpful, because I wasn't eating dairy at the time, and so that obviously wasn't my problem, and acid reflux is really not that big of a deal. It's not a big diagnosis. And so I knew that that was not the problem. And so I made another appointment with him, and it wasn't for another few months again that I could get in. So during this time between like October to December is when my health really declined, and I was just hitting an all-time low. I actually got hired halfway through my student teaching around October. I got hired as a full-time math teacher for a high school. And I wasn't even graduated yet, but I got hired, and it was really exciting, but it was also a lot of work. And so I was still technically in student teaching because I had to do all the extra student teaching stuff, all the meetings and assignments and stuff, but then I was also a full-time teacher. And so it was a really stressful time, and then I was just getting sicker and sicker, and I was loving teaching so much. I loved it, you guys. Oh, I love teaching. And every day I just get so excited to go, but at the end of the day, I was so sick. And I would come home and I'd lay in bed, and there was a time that is so embarrassing to me now, but my mother-in-law came to my house and cleaned my house because I literally did not have the energy to get up off the couch once I finished my day at work. And it was really bad. So I started to get, and really the big symptoms I should say that were debilitating was my muscle aches and my fatigue. Like my muscles felt like they were breaking down. And so I was really struggling. So we thought, you know what, we got to try something else while I'm waiting for this GI doctor, because this is not only GI symptoms, there's symptoms everywhere. So I had always known that I had endometriosis because I'd always had very severe periods. So I had heard that sometimes endometriosis can grow on the digestive tract, and maybe that could cause all my symptoms. So in December of 2016, so still this same year, I got my endometriosis removed. So I had a laparoscopic surgery, and my doctor, my OB, removed my endometriosis, and it was bad, but it wasn't like super bad. He thought it probably wasn't causing all my GI symptoms, but it was something to try. So we got that removed, and then he found several ovarian cysts. And over the next month, I was waiting for my next period to come, thinking it was going to be the best period of my life. I was actually really excited for it because my periods have been so awful my whole life. I thought my endometriosis removed, at least my periods will be better. And nope, I had another ovarian cyst rupture the day my period started. And it was so painful and just as awful as it always was, but instead of feeling it everywhere, I felt it in one specific spot. Went to the doctor, he confirmed that I had another ovarian cyst rupture. So at that time, I ended up being diagnosed with, of course, I'd already been diagnosed with endometriosis, and then I was also diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. I had a bit of a hormone imbalance, and I also had polycystic ovaries. And so I was diagnosed with those at that time, but that did not explain any of my symptoms except for my menstruation symptoms. So it really did nothing for any of my other stuff. And at this time, I started to get extremely depressed. I was so sad all the time. And I had really bad anxiety. I'd have panic attacks all the time. I remember one time my husband went out with his friends and I just had this panic attack, and I was at home by myself, and I'd never experienced that before, and I was just terrified, and I called him and I asked him to come home, and I don't even know why. And I remember times where I was just in the bathroom, curled up in a ball crying, and my husband would try to comfort me and nothing he said would help. And so I was in this really deep depression, and I felt crazy because I had been at this time tested for a lot of things and everything came back normal, and I just thought, what's wrong with me? I am crazy. So I got really, really depressed around this time. At the end of 2015, beginning of 2016 is when my depression was really in a very bad place. And so I was not only physically in pain, but I was mentally in pain, and it was hard for me to get out of bed physically, but also mentally, like, it was just getting so hard for me. So meanwhile, in January of 2017, I got a colonoscopy, and that came back completely normal. They said nothing's wrong with that, and that was quite a journey. If you've ever had a colonoscopy, that's real fun. So that happened in January of 2017, and then let me look at my notes here. February of 2017 is when I got a SIBO test, a small intestine bacterial overgrowth test. It came back positive. They didn't tell me anything about it, just that it's positive. Oh, you just take an antibiotic and it's gone. And I had talked to some people who said the antibiotics kind of threw them off. So I decided, instead of taking the antibiotic, to go to a naturopath doctor and have him help me. So I went to like a holistic type doctor, and I'd heard some success with people with SIBO with him. So I went to this doctor and chiropractor guy. I mean, he's technically a doctor, but chiropractor, and he put me on a bunch of supplements. He tested things like my adrenals and cortisol, and he tested my thyroid, and he said my thyroid level was a little off, and he talked to me about this thing called Hashimoto's disease. And I thought, oh, maybe I have Hashimoto's, but they did an antibodies test and it came back normal. So they said, never mind, your thyroid's just a little thrown off. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So they put me on a bunch of supplements. They put me on an extremely restrictive diet. It's called the SIBO paleo diet. It is basically a paleo diet, which means no grains, no dairy, no processed things, obviously. But then it's also low FODMAP, so you can't have broccoli and cauliflower and onions and garlic and a lot of fruits and vegetables. And he told me not to have any fruits, in fact, have as little fruit as possible. And also I couldn't have any starches, so like potatoes or sweet potatoes. So I cut out all of that from my diet. I call it my chicken and squash diet because that's what it felt like I was eating. Basically nothing, chicken and squash all day, every day. And I did that for about 5 months. And during that time, I also was on supplements, and I was taking 9 supplements 3 times a day. It was rough, but I thought, you know what, if this is going to kill my SIBO and fix all my other problems, it's going to work. I also, at this time, got UBI treatments, ultraviolet blood irradiation treatments, and I was thinking, if anyone's interested, I'd do a whole video on them, my experience with them. They actually made me extremely sick. I had to take a whole week off work because after the treatment, I was just out. I was just so sick. And they did a bunch of blood work and all this stuff with that doctor, and everything came back normal after I was on the supplements for a while. They said, oh, you know, your vitamin D's back to normal, your B vitamins are back to normal, your thyroid's back to normal. So they said everything looks good on the blood tests, but I still felt exactly the same. I had no relief from my symptoms. My stomach issues felt a little better, but it's because I was seriously eating nothing. And I actually was gaining weight at this time, you guys. I was eating next to nothing and I was gaining weight. It was the most frustrating time in my life. Oh, it was so bad. And they said, oh, all your blood work looks normal. Let's retest your SIBO. SIBO came back worse than it did before. So I was like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? This is miserable. I'm just taking the antibiotic. So after those few months, I think it was the end of May, I decided to do an antibiotic. So I took the antibiotic and it did nothing. I ended up trying maybe 3 or 4 different ones. I tried all the ones that are supposed to work for SIBO and nothing worked. So in May of 2016, I had 4 weeks left in the school year and I quit my job because I was that sick. I could not get out of bed every day. I was in so much pain. My muscles hurt so bad. I just couldn't get out of bed. And I was so fatigued and tired, and it sounds like weird to quit work for being fatigued, but if you have been there, you know, oh, it is just so hard. So I quit my job, which actually helped my depression because it was one less thing I had to really worry about. I had more time to go to doctors. I didn't feel quite as stressed that way. So during that month, that is when I got retested for SIBO. I tested more blood tests. I ended up going to a neurologist who tested me for MS. He did like a brain scan. I saw another GI doctor who did a CT scan. Everything was coming back normal. And of course, tons and tons of blood work. You guys, I should show you my big stack of blood work that I have because I had a doctor tell me, my guess is anemia because you've had so much blood work done. I had so much done. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I did not feel good about that, really. It just did not feel right to me. I knew that wasn't the right diagnosis. In fact, the test for it, you're supposed to press pressure points, and I failed that test. But my doctor was like, well, you have all the symptoms. We don't know what's wrong with you. It's fibromyalgia and IBS. And that's what they told me, that I just had IBS, so my SIBO was no longer there, even though I tested positive for it. But they just said, oh, you have IBS, so you're always gonna have stomach problems, and you have fibromyalgia, and so you just have this pain. And I was like, that does not make sense to me. So in this month of May, when I quit my job, I tried everything. I was so frustrated. I decided to just stop. I prayed about it, and I just felt like it was not the time for me to keep looking for answers because everything came back normal, and I was clearly not normal. I even tried, and I've talked about this before, but I tried just convincing myself that I was fine. I said, I'm just going to tell myself nothing's wrong with me, and then I will fix myself because it's all in my head, right? That's what everyone's telling me. Oh, it's just depression. Oh, it's just lactose intolerant. Oh, you're just not being good on your diet. That's what people were telling me, all my doctors. And so I decided to just try it. Let's just see if I pretend. I actually have a video where I read from my journal. It's called What It's Really Like to Live with an Invisible Illness. And I read from my journal that week that I decided to just pretend that it was all in my head and that I was fine. And I told myself I was fine, and it did not work. So anyways, I had gone to all these doctors. Nothing was working. I gave up. I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to a single doctor anymore. I'm moving on with life. And we also felt really strongly that God was asking us to be parents. And through this whole journey, I was feeling that. And I was like, that's weird. Like, why would I feel like I need to be a parent, a mother, when I'm so sick? And it never made sense. So I actually ended up getting pregnant after those months of being on that super strict diet. And if you've heard my story, I have my secondary infertility story up on my channel. You can kind of hear exactly my whole infertility journey. That's kind of another journey in there. Whew, man, this video, you guys, there's so much. I don't even know where to go. But you can watch that to hear like my whole infertility journey. But basically, I think because of that strict diet I was on and because I'd had my endometriosis surgery, I did end up getting pregnant. And then I miscarried that baby about 6 weeks later. And that was really sad for me because I did feel like it was the time to have a baby, and that I knew I felt better staying home and going on my own schedule, exercising when I felt like I needed to exercise, resting when I needed to rest. And so I thought being a mom was the perfect job for me. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. And that miscarriage crushed me. I don't even know how to talk about it. It seriously destroyed me. I was even more depressed than I was before. It was pretty early still. I think I like 7 or 8 weeks, and I was just crushed. I was so crushed, but it happened. So after that, my cyst came back. So I talk about this in my How I Got Pregnant video as well. But basically, I didn't have cysts 3 months before I got pregnant, and then I went back on that diet after I got pregnant, and after I miscarried, I should say, and all of my cysts came back. And so I knew I wasn't ovulating anymore and I wasn't going to be able to get pregnant again. So I kind of went on and tried a few more antibiotics, tried a few more things, but of course nothing was working. So I went to a counselor and I thought, I'm going to fix my brain. And I went to a counselor, I worked with a life coach, and I really started to fix my brain. I really started to feel better emotionally, which made me feel better mentally. And in November of 2017, I went on an ovulation drug called Clomid. And it's really interesting because I kept feeling like, even when I was really sick, that, it was time to have a baby, and that God was asking me to do this, but how was that possible when I was so sick? That just didn't make sense to me. But if I hadn't have had that feeling, I wouldn't have known all my fertility struggles, and that I wasn't ovulating because it took us about a year to get pregnant. And so that was really actually a blessing in this whole process. But I went on Clomid for 3 months. Unfortunately had another miscarriage in there, but I did end up getting pregnant with my daughter. And I was at this point where I really didn't know what was wrong with me. And so I just lived with it. I just thought, well, you know what? God told me that I should have a baby, so I'm going to have a baby, and he's going to bless me, whatever that means. So I go through my pregnancy, and I actually felt a little bit better when I was pregnant. A lot of my symptoms were significantly better, and I found out why later. But in July of 2018, I was 6 months pregnant, and that is when finally we found an answer. So we had gone to visit my husband's aunt, who has had some health problems like me, and she had ended up going to the Mayo Clinic. And so we talked to her, and she told us about these socks that she wears. She says, yeah, I wear these socks. They help me to be able to walk and not be so fatigued and feel better, and it helps all my symptoms. And I have a lot of salt, and I'm like, wow, wouldn't that be amazing if my treatment was wearing socks? But I thought nothing of it. I've had so many people tell me their stories. I thought, this sounds just like me. And then I would try it and it wouldn't work. So I really thought nothing of it. But we came home and my husband was like, I can't stop thinking about those socks. You got to try them. So finally, I'm like, okay, fine. I will try the stupid socks. So I got some compression socks in one day, which, you guys, I could not do this all in one day. And I was 6 months pregnant. I went to the grocery store, I went to the gym, I went on a walk, I deep cleaned the house all in the same day just because I was wearing compression socks. And I was like, what? No way, this has to just be a coincidence. I just had a good day, that I have never had that good of a day, but still it's a coincidence. So I gave it a few more days and I felt so good that week, and then I took one day off and all my symptoms came back. And I knew that these socks, whatever reason, they were helping me. So I knew my blood was just not circulating right. So after this, woo, you guys, I'm getting hot in here. This is quite the story. So after that, I posted on my Instagram, because I'd been sharing my story for a while at this point on my Instagram, which go follow me if you're not. And I posted and someone messaged me and said, this sounds like POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And I'd heard of that, but every time I had heard of it, it was someone who passes out 6 times a day. And so I was like, well, I don't pass out, I don't have that. And she shared with me, like, no, not everyone passes out. In fact, most people with POTS don't pass out. And so she shared with me all this information. I'm like, whoa, I totally have this. And you can go watch my POTS story. That one will share with you like how I tested for POTS. But basically, I tested myself for POTS, figured out that, yes, I have POTS, called my doctor. I'm like, I know what's wrong with me. And I told him about it, and he's like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. And I was so frustrated. Like, how did you not ever think to test me for that? But it's okay, because everything happens for a reason. Anyway, so I found out I had POTS. I started treating it, and I felt so much better, and I was hugely pregnant. I went to the gym the day that I had my baby. That's how good I felt. And I was exercising a lot. I was doing so good. So in October of 2018, I had my beautiful baby, and I was treating my POTS. And at that point, I thought that was the central core of all my chronic illnesses, because I was feeling so much better. Of course, I still had symptoms that I dealt with every day, but they were significantly better. Like, they weren't where I couldn't get out of bed. It was like, oh, sometimes I have a hard time getting out of bed, but other times I feel great. And it was kind of a roller coaster, and it still is, because that's life with chronic illness. But because, one, I knew what it was, so I didn't feel crazy anymore. And 2, I knew how to treat it. I knew what to do when I was feeling sick because I knew why I was feeling sick. Oh, my blood's not circulating, so I need to lay down, or I need to exercise, or anyways, it just made me feel so much better. So I had my baby, and it was a beautiful, wonderful time. I loved being a mother. And I go throughout the next year being a mother, treating my POTS, sharing my story. I started my YouTube channel, started sharing my story with you guys, and in September of this year, so just a couple months ago, I got pregnant again. And it was because my body had just gone through a big hormonal change with nursing that it just triggered me into ovulating, which I don't normally do. And my doctor said probably would not be easy with my next baby. So I got pregnant and I was so excited for baby number 2. And unfortunately, I miscarried that baby at 5 weeks. I was crushed. I was so sad, and I shared that story with you here on YouTube if you want to go watch that video. My miscarriage story, it was really sad. I didn't know why I kept miscarrying, but I figured there was something because I now had 3 miscarriages, and that's kind of the sign that something's wrong. 1 is totally normal, 2 is still supposedly normal, but after 3, it's where the doctor says, okay, something's not right. We're going to look into this. So I didn't really know what to do. I was sad because I knew I wouldn't be able to get pregnant very easily after that, but I knew everything happened for a reason. So I just trusted in God that everything would be okay. A few weeks later, after my miscarriage, I went and got a full body scan, and I have a video on that as well. You can go watch that. I got a full body scan, and of course they told me that probably wouldn't be able to get pregnant very easy. But they also told me that I had Hashimoto's disease, which is the thing that my doctor told me about years before and told me I didn't have it because I didn't pass the antibodies test. Go watch my Hashimoto's video. I know I'm just sending you to all my other videos, but there's so much information, it's hard to share all in one video. So I share why my test was negative before, it was a false negative, and why I do have Hashimoto's disease, but Hashimoto's disease causes miscarriages. And so now I know why I keep miscarrying, which is good to know in case I ever do get pregnant again. Now I will know, which hopefully one day. But now I know that I do have Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune disease, which means my body is attacking itself. And honestly, from the beginning, that's what it felt like was going on, that my body was attacking itself. And I thought for a very long time that I had an autoimmune disease, but we just couldn't figure it out. And I was tested for so many. And I say that I had a lot of blood work, and I missed so many things I was tested for because there were seriously so many. I couldn't even explain all of them in this video. But I did think for a long time, and lots of doctors told me that they thought I had an autoimmune disorder. So that is just the cherry on top of my chronic illnesses, where I now know everything that's going on with me, and that my Hashimoto's is really the core of all of it. I thought POTS maybe was, but I think Hashimoto's is the core, and I was feeling so much better by treating my POTS because treating my POTS also helps treat my Hashimoto's. Some of the treatments are similar, but treating my POTS helped my blood get flowing and help the rest of my stuff get a little bit better. So I am doing okay. I am still up and down every single day. It's different. I never know how I'm gonna feel, but I definitely am so grateful for this journey because it has brought me to such a humble place, and I am so much happier now. It's funny, I'm happier now than I was before my chronic illnesses started, even though when they started I was here, I dipped down super low, but now I feel like I'm up here and everything's gonna be okay. And even though I feel pain every day, that's just my life, and I'm totally okay with that. And I wanted to share this with you just so I had a place to send you for the whole story. And this is updated until November of 2019. And I'm sure more things will happen. Hopefully we found all my chronic illnesses by now. We'll see. There could be something else out there that we just don't know about. But I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have a chronic illness, please tell me your story. Leave it in the comments. Send me a message on Instagram. I want to connect with you. I want to hear your story. So I hope that you have a beautiful day. Give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time.